adults with the Pledge of Allegiance at our meetings. So it's always interesting to see what questions students have for you, but it's important we set an example for young people who will someday serve on this board as well. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Certainly. Director Anderson?
Here.
Director Colson? Here. Director DeWitt? Here. Director Durante? Here. Director Frega? Aye. Director Fuentes?
Here.
Director Higgins?
Here.
Director Hobson?
Here.
Director Cotel?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Present.
Director McGallis?
Here.
Director Melvin?
Here.
Director Pang? Here. Director Ross? Here. Director Triani? Here. Chairman Dillard?
Here.
We have a quorum of 16 present with no one absent.
Super. And as always, I thank you for your attendance. This board has tremendous attendance. We attend committee meetings that we're not even by law required to out of our diligence. And like Director McGallis said, and I know Leanne, when I talked to her yesterday, she said, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. I've been to so many budget meetings and hearings, but that goes for the board too. And I thank all of you for attending, as Mr. Lackman pointed out, literally tenfolds of budget meetings and hearings over the last few months. So I thank you for your attendance, not only today, but out there in the areas that you all represent. On item 3A, that is the approval of the minutes from the meeting, it seemed like yesterday, but it was a great meeting with our service boards from November 29th of 2017. Any questions or comments on that? If not, can I have a motion and a second? Director Fuentes moves that we adopt those minutes, seconded by Director Pang. Audrey, why don't you take a roll call on that, and we'll have a baseline roll call.
Okay. Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director Colson? Yes. Director DeWitt? Yes. Director Durante? Aye. Director Frega? Yes. Director Fuentes?
Aye.
Director Higgins?
Aye.
Director Hobson?
Yes.
Director Cotel? Aye. Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director McGallis?
Aye.
Director Melvin?
Yes.
Director Pang? Yes. Director Ross? Yes. Director Triani? Aye. Chairman Dillard?
Yes.
16 ayes.
Thank you, and that will be so reported and it's adopted. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting today. There are no scheduled speakers, but I believe, George, I see you coming forward to the podium. Thank you. Introduce yourself, and by our rules, sir, you have, and you are limited to 3 minutes. So thank you.
Could someone turn his microphone on, please?
There you go.
To you, sir, my name is Mr. Blakemore. When you're on the plantation, old black man always called Bill and George and Pete, so I respect you. I have been informed here by listening and watching this process. So you have a balanced budget. This budget is being balanced on poor people, poor black people, poor Hispanic citizens, poor whites. So you have a balanced budget. But what is the harm? And this cloud is not over. The storm is still going to come. Perhaps you should have increased service and you would increase ridership. They have Lyft and Uber and other forms of transportation. You must be innovative. And also with procurement and your capital budget, you must include black people on these contracts. I want to know how much money is spent on each contract and how many black vendors benefit and what amount of money and what was the scope of the work. So this is why it's very important for some concerned citizens to appear. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear the public. You had other meetings, you say many opportunities, but I'm here representing poor people. We're being taxed by the county government, the state, and now with the corporate tax with the federal government, we're being taxed out. Now, you are balancing your budget on the back of poor citizens of our great region and our great state and our great city. So I'm not elated on this balanced budget. You have spent this money unwisely that you received. There's still a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on here with transportation. First, that should have been your main purpose as good steward, to cut out a lot of high management. So again, this is very important for people to come up and speak. So you had, and always, every meeting I go to, it's always a rubber stamp. Everybody say, I. Somebody should have been saying, oh, I will not vote for this budget and state their reasons. So this is government as not at its best. It's government at its worst. I know about 3 minutes. You don't have anybody else coming up here. You should welcome, if I exceed my 3 minutes, always welcome now why you don't have the public here at the final time? You had them here earlier. They should be right here now. So again, I would like to say to each one of you, Feliz Navidad, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa and Hanukkah, and Happy Holiday Season. So I can be politically correct, but I don't have to be with this money and these contracts and all this fact that's going on here. So who is venture? You can in-house this. The technology is here for you to do it. May God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Blakemore, and we very much take to heart your comments, and thank you for your appearance and time. Okay, item 5 is the Executive Director's report to Director Leanne Redden.
I will be pretty brief. Through November, the state owes the RTA $451 million. That's the combination of the debt service reimbursement and the public transportation fund delays. The state is about 17 months behind on the debt service payment and about the equivalent of about 8.7 months, to be specific, on PTF. And as B touched on before, the year-to-date borrowing cost for us to carry that debt as of November totals $4.8 million. There is no state update since the state is not in the state legislature is not in session. But I did want to take a moment to remind you that we have shared the strategic plan with all of you. It is out for public comment through the end of this month. We have just wrapped up a series of public hearings in each county around the region, and we will be reaching out to you individually, so I wanted to encourage you to take a look at that. We will be bringing that to the board in January for your final approval, even though you've engaged on several occasions throughout the process, more than a year-long process. But I would like you to maybe take some holiday time and enjoy that read. It's actually a very well put together document, I believe. So, in terms of Washington, Congress passed a continuing resolution on December 7th, I should say, that will fund the federal government through December 22nd. It's anticipated that they will then pass a second one that will get the government through mid-January. So look forward to right before the holiday season on the steps of the Capitol, them trying to get the next continuing resolution passed. This, though, they anticipate will give them time to come to agreement on a broader omnibus spending bill to fund the remainder of 2018. We expect that transportation funding levels should align with the FAST Act authorization levels and will look very similar to those from 2017. On December 7th, the White House also said it plans to release an infrastructure proposal in early January. As with several other proposals that have come forward, it'll be a proposal of principles, not actually a bill or any legislative text. The package is likely to put forward $200 billion in federal dollars over 10 years that would need to be leveraged by an additional $800 billion in spending by states, locals, and private entities. So it's that's the way the outlook looks on that. The package also is supposed to focus on infrastructure investment in 4 key areas: formula block grants for rural areas, federal lending programs, money for states and localities, and money for transportation projects, transformational projects. And the point in all of that is this is not just money. They're broadening out what is infrastructure. It's going to go beyond transit, bridges, roads. It's going to go into many other areas, and so likely to be spread even thinner. So we'll be staying on top of that. The last time I talked about it, and I think everybody knows that the tax is sort of sucking all the air out, that tax reform is sucking all the air out of Washington right now. We understand that the conference committee reached agreement last night. We have not seen any of those details. We are told that it looks closer to being like the Senate version of the tax bill, but we don't necessarily know, and it probably won't be actually released until next week, so we will stay on top of that. We have continued to stay very active in that space, writing regular letters to members of Congress and key conference committee members to sort of highlight the areas and issues and concerns that we have. The Senate bill does eliminate the advance funding for the last version that we've seen, the advance refunding of bond interest and the allowance of employees to deduct the transportation fringe benefit as a business expense, but it does preserve the tax exemption status of private activity bonds. So there's sort of some trade-offs in some of that, but again, the net for us is probably, in a broader context, probably not that good, and we will keep you posted. So just one kind of giving into sort of the context of giving back in the holiday season. I just wanted to let you know that the RTA has been volunteering this year in what is called the Midday Mentoring Program at local Chicago public schools, specifically at Brentano Elementary, to help 25 students improve their reading skills. Earlier this week, we celebrated the holidays with students by handing out RTA-branded gifts like headphones, pens, and little drawstring bags. But it's a great activity. It's rewarding, and it's kind of fun to get to know the kids and spend a little time on our lunch hour bringing along their reading skills. However, some of them have been pretty good and very engaged, so it's been kind of fun. With that, I will end my report, wishing everyone happy holidays, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions? Just one little caveat on the infrastructure plan to be introduced, I guess, in January by the administration. One of the things that I'm picking up, and I've read in a variety of sources, is much more dependency and requirements at the state level. And, you know, there's a theme here this morning. The state of Illinois is not keeping up with other surrounding states, let alone nationally, in its support of public transportation, which is an economic engine for the city of Chicago and the Chicagoland region and the state of Illinois. But one of the things that keeps me awake at night is that the Trump, and I've said this all along, the state of Illinois needs to be ready to have any matching funds that the Trump administration is going to put forward on infrastructure. And that's just not mass transit. That is roads and bridges. It looks like it will be and should be water and sewer and other infrastructure. But the state's got to be ready to go. And as it has been pointed out to me by our peers nationwide, whether it's the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce or my counterpart in Phoenix, they're all ready to go. And Indiana has just stepped up with, Governor Holcomb. I know increased the motor fuel tax in Indiana to be ready to go. And Indiana is also putting, it's nearly $1 billion into improvements to the South Shore Railroad, a line that has a pittance of what Metra's ridership is, $1 billion. So we will be watching what's going on in January with bated breath, but the state of Illinois clearly needs to get its act together to be able to be nimble when it comes to getting our share of our citizens' federal tax dollars returned to Illinois for infrastructure. So that's how I see that. So,
Mr. Chairman.
yes, Director Hobson.
Yeah, I had a question regarding the state delinquency. It's been going up steadily. Now, the idea behind the most recent budget and the tax increase and the 2% and the 10% reduction that we've all experienced should allow the state to catch up on their obligations. Do we see that that's happening? And because I'm concerned that if the state has any more delays, that there will be that'll cause us to exceed our $400 million borrowing authority. And if we're forced to that area, we know that the service boards are going to have to reach into their contingency funds, and are they prepared to do that?
So, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. I wish I had a crystal ball. The state is actually, since passing a budget, they've at least become more regular in their payments. And so that predictability is there. Have they been able to pay down the backlog? No. And Jeremy, what's the state's debt? It's, billions. What is the, I mean, amount of money they owe us is a large and a significant portion, and we're one of the highest owed.
It was at $16 billion,
Yes.
and now it's been paid
So-
down a bit. But
We're on a list of many, but there is a little bit more predictability behind it right now. There was hope that they might be able to make a couple of extra payments this year and into next year to sort of pay down a little bit, but again, we'll have to see how that plays out. B, I don't know if you wanted to add anything specific on the short-term debt.
In the last few months, we've seen a little bit more money coming in, like another 10 million or another 8 million. So we might have received like maybe 3 payments in 1 month, but they're not like the full 30. We're talking about PTF. Sales tax is never delayed. So instead of getting maybe 30 million, maybe we got 40 million in 1 month, or maybe another 10 million on another month. What's of real concern is the ASA, which is the additional state assistance, and the additional financial assistance, which is for debt service. That's at $170 million. That's, it's 17 months late. So we need to get that in. We could never exceed our short-term borrowing capacity. It's at $400 million. And yes, this board receives every year the fund balance reserve plans, and Director McGallis brings that up every budget season. We're clear now that we no longer have a region-wide fund balance. They are responsible, and they've identified funds that they would utilize as contingencies as needed. But no, we could not exceed our $400 million, so they know that, and you heard us report, we're one payment away, but now they have been coming through regularly, as Leanne pointed out, and we're getting a little bit more money. We're hoping that improves, and what we really need is that ASA, AFA to come through.
So the service boards are all well aware that we're maxed out, and that the next step is really them dipping into their contingency
Yes,
funds.
they are.
Thank you so much.
Director Ross.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know this probably wouldn't work, but why don't we suggest to the state that instead of withholding that 2%, that they pay down our debt with that until they don't owe us anything else?
It's a good suggestion, a great suggestion, actually.
Suggestion noted. Well,
Thank you. Director Frega.
I'm concerned with the interest that we're paying on some of that money that we're borrowing. We're passing that on to the taxpayers, and I think that's totally unjust. And, we ought to really be concerned with what we're paying in interest. I'm always very concerned with the interest that is paid because it's lost money. We should really raise Cain with the state on paying their debt. That's all I have. Thank you.
Agree with you. Director Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, this comment is probably bigger than RTA, but certainly encompasses, I think, the RTA a bit. And I'm thinking about our guest speaker and what he shared with us. And I'm sitting back thinking about what he said about how, fare increases and the like are affecting poor communities in a much different way than more wealthier communities. And then I think about the letter or the article in the Journal yesterday that talked about Illinois and the fact that people are leaving the state at numbers that are staggering and the effect on our tax base. And they quantified that now. I don't know if their numbers are right or wrong, I don't know, but if they're even close, I do think there's probably something we ought to be a bit vocal about in terms of sharing the bigger picture about what's happening to the state, which affects us here. And so when you start trying to put all these pieces together, I do wonder if there's a role we could play to help advance the dialogue about what's happening to our state because of many of the dynamics.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and if you have some ideas on that, please talk to Leanne, talk to Susan Massal. I have tremendous respect for Mr. Blakemore, and I take to heart everything he said, from minority contracting.
But here's the thing, Mr. Chairman.
Who gets impacted by the fare increases the most?
And it's easy to say. I think the service boards have done a really good job cutting costs. You'd always wonder if there's more that you can do. But I think collectively we ought to give some thought to how we want to put the dots together and how we want to engage in the broader conversation. I'm not sure, as I sit here, I know exactly what the answer is, but I think all of us collectively figuring out how to engage and insert ourselves in this discussion is probably valuable.
No, there's no doubt, and that is a great suggestion, and it's very much part of the story we must tell to the public and to Congress and to the state legislature. And I was heartened to see in the report that the CTA is using our ICE funding for improved service on the south side of Chicago. And I want to remind individuals, including Mr. Blakemore, that we have and give and grant every year $100 million in free and reduced rides, generally based upon a means test. Along that line, the state of Illinois has constantly reduced its reimbursement to us for that mandate, and we're basically down almost to no reimbursement. We are eating, for, I guess, the lack of a better word, their mandate, the government's mandate for giving $100 million of free and reduced rides, and it's one of the things that we need to look at in our whole conversation with Springfield. If they're going to mandate those, then they need to help us come up with that cost, because that gets passed on to, for lack of a better word, the regular riders. And then I guess one other thought that I have, and if some of you came to see my presentation at the City Club, while 70%, it's an amazing number, 70% of the people who work in the absolute economic core of Illinois, the downtown and central business district, take mass transit to work. I have never forgotten, and I talked about the number 9 bus, which is our busiest bus service that certainly is not taking people to the downtown business district. And I'm very cognizant that every day people have routes that don't bring them to the 70% of the downtown business core which we serve. But we have over 2 million daily riders a day. That is 1/6 of Illinois' population rides the RTA in terms of ridership a day. And there certainly cannot be anything more important for the economic development of Illinois, as every other state puts more money into mass transit than getting workers to work. And unlike other areas, especially in the city of Chicago, the yellow school bus is the CTA, and to some extent Metro. More than probably any other city in America, our students, whether they are charter school students, parochial school students, or the CTA, or Chicago Public School students, take the CTA and Metra to get to school, let alone the 60,000 people that are eligible for the ADA paratransit service that never gets lost on me, but serves a population that most folks never really think about. But those are how individuals maintain a normal life, live at home, get to their physician appointments, their doctor's appointments, and 2 million, 1/6 of Illinois riders a day, 1/6 of Illinois is dependent upon the Regional Transportation Authority and our service boards. Yes, sir. Director Dranny.
Yeah, is there a ranking? I mean, they owe us almost $500 million. I tend to think about the other agencies or governmental bodies they owe money to.
We're
and
number
that
2
they're
in terms.
borrowing it, money short term and the interest they're paying. So where do we rank with this $500 million all?
We're number 2 in terms of public agencies. Who's number 1? It's not. I've forgotten who it is.
I think it's the retirement systems.
The pension system.
Any other comments or questions? So we're on Leanne's report, right?
Yes.
But I'm done.
Okay. Thank you, Leanne. Item 6 is the approval of consent item as it appears on the board agenda, or the consent items within us. It's 6A, 6B, and 6C. And that's the ordinance adopting the RTA's procurement rules and regulations as amended by the committee this morning. 6B is the ordinance authorizing the quarterly capital amendment, as we heard, very minor changes. And then the heavy lifting is the ordinance adopting the 2018 budgets and 2019 and 20 financial plans, 2018 through 22 capital programs of the service boards and authority, and appropriating the funds for the 2018 budgets. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a, yes, Director Colson?
Just as I understand, 6A as amended, under 6A as amended, this board would continue to vet and approve contracts over $100,000. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
That's correct. Director McGallis, with a great deal of thanks to him, moves for the approval of this item, seconded by Director Sarah Pang. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on this? Seeing no
16 ayes.
objection, leave is granted, and thank you all for this this approval of a clearly difficult year, but with difficulty still on the horizon. It's approved. Thank you. Item 7 is the approval of contract and expenditure items as they appear on the board agenda. 7A is the ordinance authorizing a contract or administrative support for the RTA Transit Fare Program, and 7B are travel expenses or reimbursements for board members as required by law. Just one comment on 7A from me, the chair. As we look at fare increases that are clearly the result of state non-support of public transportation, I say to the riders of this system, go to the RTA website, talk to the RTA. There is a transit benefit fare program that where you are eligible, and there are 1,300 businesses that we work with and administer through the RTA to use pre-tax dollars to mitigate the cost of riding either the CTA, Metra, or PACE. And it's a tremendous benefit. You should make use of it. And, talk to the RTA, but use the transit benefit program, and it certainly helps mitigate your expenses of riding the system. And I want to point out to the riders also, if you dump the pump and you use mass transit, you can save $11,000 a year on average by taking mass transit. That's one of the things that when that business newspaper from the East wrote about Chicago yesterday and our cost of living, it leaves out the fact that unlike most cities, you can save $11,000 because of the excellent public transportation system we have here, and that $11,000 can certainly mitigate some of the living expenses of being in Illinois, along with the fact that our salaries in Illinois far exceed any of the other states that paper lauds around us. And over your lifetime, you will make millions of more dollars if you live in Illinois than those other states. And thus, we might have a slightly higher cost of living, but you get what you pay for. So on 7A, use the transit benefit program if you're one of our riders and watching. Can I have a motion on item 7?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I don't have a 7B on my agenda.
7B was sent to you, I think, through both email as you've got the old agenda it's been amended. So all the directors have received over the last few days 7B.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
reason
if
it wasn't
anyone
there-
wants to see the actual materials, I do have copies, but I did send them out.
Super. And it's just because we were sort of bunched up. Our last meeting was November 29th, and now we're, it was a two-week period. That's why. Okay, can I have approval of, Director Trione has moved the adoption of items 7A and 7B. Is there a second? Seconded by Director Don DeWitt from wonderful Kane County. Is there leave for the attendance roll call on this? Seeing no objection, leave is granted.
16 ayes.
Thank you. Item 9 is new business. Anybody have any new business to bring up before the board? I want to remind everybody that our next meeting, it's hard to believe, is in the year 2018 on January 18th. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And Director Ross.
Mr. Chairman, before we adjourn, we've given a lot of people credit for this budget approval, but I think our board owes you and our Finance Committee Chair, our Executive Director and senior staff and their staffs a lot of credit for the work done to approve the budget. For those of us who've been around a long time, we remember what those wars used to be, and it's nice that we're all working together and approve what obviously has been a very difficult budget. But thank you.
Thank you, and I want to thank the service boards. They were here last month, but the collaboration between the RTA and our service boards has never been better. That bodes well for taxpayers and our riders. And as difficult as it is, I mentioned the CTA is clearly better today than I think it's ever been in my lifetime. And we are moving forward in spite of some very difficult budget seasons. And transit riders, I think, see the benefit of the hard work that's gone on. We're moving forward. And as I constantly say, where transit goes, it's proven the economy grows. And we cannot neglect this system that was put together by our ancestors. And we can't leave the millennial generation or the Linksters, which follow them, with a system that does not enable them to get to work and to school and around our great metropolitan region. So with that, we're moving forward. So speaking of moving forward, is there a motion to adjourn?
I want to make
Yes,
one more
Sarah.
comment. Mr. Blakemore made very strong points, and Director Anderson followed up on them. I think what the credit that you and the team get and the service boards is that those fights are happening among the staff. It is tough decisions that people have to make, and they used to happen in public at these tables across all of it. And so I think the power that we have by collaborating and making the tough decisions and compromising is that we can move forward and make a very strong point to the state of Illinois about their duties and how it really is hurting citizens, hurting the state overall. If we get on the path to recovering, it's going to take a really long time for the state to come up. So I think you know, a few years ago, that would have been hard for us to do, to go in block and to build coalitions with our riders who are so powerful. I mean, we see the power of citizens today changing our culture, changing state elections, you know, and so I think that Director Anderson's point is that we should take a kind of fresh look about how we bring it together and be heard.
Amen. Amen. Thank you all very much for your service. Mr. Blakemore, thank you for your comments. We obviously take them to heart. So we've had a motion and a second, right?
Nope.
A motion to adjourn by Director Pang. That's why I went to her. So, seconded by Director Colson. Is there leave from the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Merry Christmas.